Well, thank you everybody for joining us for our time with Charlie Montreuil. Charlie, thank you for joining us. Charlie is a force and a legend in the human capital world, not only here in Minneapolis, but broadly. Can't wait for you to get to spend some time with him. Charlie's currently SVP of HR for Best Buy, and is going to bring to us an extremely unique positioning of not only his personal and professional, not only Best Buy internally, but Best Buy externally on all things caregiver. As always, Alex, please take it away in our time with Charlie. Charlie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
We are, just so everyone knows, we are Charlie's re-entry from a holiday. So poor Charlie. They have to be like, Jodi, I wanted to say something like, one of my dreams is to be introduced as this woman needs no introduction. Charlie, I think now my new dream is not this person needs no introduction, but this person is a force and a legend. Like, how delicious is that? That's extraordinary. So Charlie, we're going to start with a surprise quiz that you didn't know about. And the quiz is for you. And I actually am really super curious if you're going to know the answer. So what do all these things have in common? Led Zeppelin, double rainbows, a 3-year camcorder warranty, and your love for the Gophers.
Okay, that is a surprise.
Okay, any guesses?
Let's see, rainbow, Led Zeppelin, warranty. I have no idea.
Okay, what they all have in common was our curiosity was piqued in our first conversation when you talked about how you don't really have a big presence on LinkedIn. And in fact, let us warn anyone who's watching, do not believe what you see on LinkedIn, because if you do, you're still at Carlson, which we know you have not been in for 12 years. You are very much now at Best Buy, and anyone at Best Buy who's been able to reap the extraordinariness of the work that you've been doing there would know that. But if you did know you on Facebook, which is where you said you do sometimes share some things, you would learn all those things. For example, that you've been a ferocious fan of Led Zeppelin. You just took a picture of double rainbows. You had a flashback moment where you did the 25, I think it was like 20 years ago, something in the 80s, like camcorder warranty. And I'd forgotten camcorders even existed. And then I guess the Gophers is a team that you love. So,
yeah, very much so.
We just want you to know everyone should ask to be Charlie's friend on Facebook, because then you'll get to know all these other beautiful parts about him, which I think is part of what makes you so good at what you do and so special. So, Charlie, I would say that you are a lover of and a believer in humanity, truly in the good of people, and the idea that not only can we affect change for good on behalf of everybody, but that we must. And that is what we're going to dig in on right now, specifically on the topic of caregivers. So your first real caregiver activism started with Best Buy Backup Childcare, which was actually an idea from a store manager, which is someone who Googles you can go read that story. It's beautiful. But now it's really a far, far broader thing. In fact, you made this distinction that we thought was beautiful, that there really is no benefits department. In your mind, it's the Department of Wellbeing. At a high level, can you share with us, why do you make that distinction between benefits and well-being?
Yeah, well, clearly, as you looked at the different components of the old benefit world, and you apply that to employees, and you really look at life from the view from an employee, what an employee brings into the organization. And employees don't drop their problems off as they enter the threshold of your doorstep. And so as we focus so much of our energy in an organization on ensuring that our employees are engaged, that they're giving this voluntary effort into the organization, but if you're coming into work burdened by physical illness, by depression, you have debt issues, you have family issues that are taking away from your time at work, you're not bringing your whole self to work. And so we look at, rather than the provision of benefits, that it's our job to partner with every single employee to look at how can we maximize their level of well-being in the organization. And so we start from that premise.
I love that. I think that's so beautiful. And it sort of turns on its head the notion of the work-life balance. And I agree with you so much. I think it's so funny when people think that you magically go into work and forget about the fact that you're going through a divorce, or that your mother with Alzheimer's moved in, or that you're afraid you're not gonna be able to pay your rent. Like, of course that stress travels with you. I think one of my favorite things about you and your team is that you really start with this very beautiful philosophy that resonates with folks.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as many of us know, there are a lot of beautiful philosophies out there that nothing squat diddly gets done about it. But you've actually manifested this philosophy in what you do. And one of our favorite examples that we'd love for you to talk about a little bit is this resource guidebook. And what I was thinking about when you were describing it originally is it's organized around what I would consider the voice in my head, right? Like, what do I actually think about? What are the words that I actually use? Can you share what was the process for the guidebook? What were your guidelines in developing it?
Sure, absolutely. But what you're talking about is our caregiver guide. And that was the brainchild of really looking at this full array of programs that we have in the organization, and yet for an employee to navigate what we have available to them, what employees need to navigate as far as laws and regulations in caregiving, and all of the programs that we have, the programs that are available, and the resources that are available outside of Best Buy. We took the viewpoint of an employee, and the viewpoint of an employee of what would, from their perspective, navigating the world of caregiver, what would they need to know? What do we have? What resources can we help them with? Because we know if we help them on this journey, they are bringing their whole selves into work. And right now, from the perspective of an employee, and just using an example, if you need to move and investigate moving one of your parents into a nursing facility, where do you go to get information on that? How do you go about it? How do you get it? Well, most of us will identify with, in the past, in the corporate headquarters at Best Buy, you would elbow someone who's gone through it before, and you'd be seeking advice from them. How did you handle this when your dad went into the nursing home? So we took that kind of perspective, and what we did was, from looking at the view of an employee, the first thing we asked is, who's a caregiver? And we found out, my God, there are so many different kinds of caregiver. If you have an autistic child, you're a caregiver in a different sense. If you have young children, if you have elderly parents, our definition of loved one has changed so much. I am telling you, pets can be, you can be a caregiver with pets, for God's sake. And so, first of all, defining the different areas of caregiver and the different unique needs they might have. We then integrated the laws and regulations. We defined terms. We created a handy guidebook for people, both online and paper-based, for people that want more of a reference guide. And then what we did is, with regard to caregiving, we integrated our different programs into the caregiver arsenal for people to look at, in taking advantage of all of the things that we have in one place, versus trying to go, what is my time off? What do I get in healthcare? What's my EAP do for me? And having to go separately, we put it all together and integrated it. And guess what? I have a surprise for you. Anybody who wants our caregiver guide, they just have to let you know, and we will provide it free. This is something we want to give to anyone who wants it. Plagiarize, copy, modify. The more we get it out to people, if we help one other person navigate this, we've helped 10 other people. And so we want to do that.
It's part of what makes you so special. And when we followed up with Liz, who's on your team, Becky, she's amazing, and said to her, are we allowed to distribute this? Because this is IP. Like, this thing is amazing. This is a competitive advantage. And she said, oh, Charlie wants to change the world, and he wants specifically to help with caregivers. And so he is not holding this tightly. He is, sharing this broadly. I, by the way, am an old fogey, and I want the paper-based one because it gives me comfort to touch paper.
It's glossy.
Right, exactly. It really, in my mind, I was sort of, it's like peer-to-peer brought to life, and in this ongoing dynamic way. And one of the things that people will see when they get it is it helps, the process of going through it is written in such a way to be so engaging that it helps you recognize that you are a caregiver. Have you brought groceries to somebody? Have you helped somebody with their bills? You're a caregiver. And and I know you do that in the way that you get the message out. So, you've also really incorporated that concept into the benefit design for Best Buy. And you mentioned this already. You said in one of our calls, it's about integrating the availability of the benefits then into this narrative. Can you talk a little bit more around how your benefits now are designed, and how if I am an employee, an associate at Best Buy, what is my experience? Do I think about it as maternity benefit versus paternity versus, adult parent? What am I seeing?
Yeah. Well, I think you first, the approach is one in which we first want to help you level set where you're at on your well-being continuum, and whether that be physical, mental well-being, financial well-being, or social, time off, work-life well-being. We want to help you identify where you're at on that continuum. And then our approach is, of course, that we've got this flexible benefit program that then allows you to choose those benefit programs that'll best fit your needs. And so developing this more individualistic product offering to employees, understanding we've got everything from single young people in our store environment to traditional families and everything in between. So the benefit set can't be generic. You've got to be able to customize it to fit your needs.
Well, and speaking of this, Jodi.
Yes, speaking of, I'm going to caretake for my 16-year-old. So I have to exit stage right, not planned, not staged. Leave you to Charlie. Thank you very much, Alex.
But a great demonstration of this is what Best Buy would be like. Absolutely. Yeah. You do you, boo. Like, go take care of your kids. You gotta do that too.
The difference with Best Buy is you would have just left. You wouldn't have had to explain why you were leaving.
So one of the things that I think is going to be very helpful for anyone listening to this, you got very specific around an amount of time, and you said something. It's more about and who is included in for whom you can take this leave. And I'd love you to share that specifics. I'll just say one of the things I loved about it. You said it's more about who you consider a loved one versus how you define a loved one, which was so pretty.
Yes. Well, of course, the journey was a very simple one, and that is you couldn't pick up a newspaper or an industry article where people weren't talking about this competition between you offer 8 weeks of maternity leave, we're making it 16 weeks. You're offering X weeks of PTO, we're offering X weeks, and we're getting in this trap of continually looking at what the competition is offering, what they're doing, in what I felt were very traditional, specific areas addressed by a typical benefit program. And it was really about increasing the length, then really looking at the essence of what you were trying to do. And in this day and age, with blended families, with the definition of who is a loved one, we've crossed so many boundaries of who those special people are in your lives. And we took a step back and said, we need to address from the view of an employee, what is it about when they would need time off to take care of someone who is it that they should take care of? Who are we to define who their loved one is? And so we started with a broad definition of loved one, and it can be mother-in-laws and father-in-laws and grandparents and parents and children. And so we try to remove ourselves from the definition of where your focus is on who you need to take care of. And second, we wanted to make sure that everyone had a base amount of time that they could take off, take care of that loved one, come back to the organization refreshed, having known that their focus for that length of time that they needed was on the person that they needed to take care of, so that they could come back to work understanding, I've taken care of them, I'm taking care of them, I value the organization, I've cleared my ability now to focus on my job. And so we decided to give every full-time employee 4 weeks of paid time off. Every part-time employee has 2 weeks of paid time off for family matters. And we call it caregiving leave. So we put a label on it, caregiving leave for caregiving, with a broad definition and a length of period of time annually that that people can use.
You know, we had a funny discussion about how, you know, there was a concern that was going to freak out the CFO. Like, how much is this going to charge? And how much is it going to cost? And what's the ROI? And you had a very strong opinion on that. Share that opinion, because I think it's a value one, and share about whether or not it's playing out.
Yeah, the very, very simply, of course, when we went into this, we didn't know exactly how much it would cost. We didn't know exactly how many people would take advantage of it. We looked at our leave of absence policy. We had some educated guesses, but at the end of the day, you know, leadership was presented with the proposal. They could see what we were doing, and the final bottom line was, listen, when you have an employee who is able to focus on taking care of the people they loved, and they come back to the organization, they are going to work harder for this company, and they are never going to leave. And that has played itself out in spades. I know I gave you an example of where this worked. We had an employee when we very first launched this program. I got an email back from an employee and said, "Dear Mr. Montreuil, I want to thank you for the caregiving leave benefit that you provided me. I had used up all of my leave of absence with my own medical emergency, and my wife and I just gave birth to a newborn son. My newborn son has a heart defect and requires surgery. That 4 weeks of caregiver leave allowed me to spend that 4 weeks with my newborn son and my wife to make sure that I took care of them, that he came through the surgery with flying colors. And I am telling you, Mr. Montreuil, I will never, ever, ever leave Best Buy. Thank you." Yeah. And we've got, there's story after story after story that is similar, that just you know, really tugs at your heartstrings. But that is the bottom line. And when you look at the small investment we made for a lifetime of engagement, that pays for itself.
Yeah, it's like, it's the bottom line and it's the top line, right? Because it's you. I'm sure this is a massive reason why people stay, and we know the value of retention. It's a recruiting asset when you talk about a competitive market for folks trying to grab each other. It's an ability to help keep costs down overall, because we know caregiver stress literally hurts people physically. And I love the combination of data and stories. We talk a lot at Archangels about, data allows the brain to engage, but it's stories that capture the heart, and stories are where behavior change happens. So I want to give you a couple of data points on the impact of COVID. And we knew that the need for help for caregivers was huge pre-COVID, but post-COVID, oh my Lord, 57%, this is Archangel's research that we just did, 57% of caregivers overall are experiencing clinically significant levels of stress, anxiety, and or depression.
Mhm.
This actually climbs to 92% when you consider high intensity caregivers. One of the challenges is there's been a stigma against asking for help for so long.
Yeah.
And you deployed a very, very specific strategy to erase that stigma around how you involved your leaders. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. When you, I'll give you a specific example on mental well-being. As we were developing that strategy, and the strategy is threefold. One is, first, let's break down that stigma. Let's talk about it. Let's be open about it. Two, let's involve our managers. Managers are in a position to spot issues, start the conversation, to lead people to help, but they've got to be able to identify the things that they can, and they need to know how to approach people and talk to people, right? Third, we've got to have a safety net network for people to go to, whether you're part-time, whether you're full-time. We wanted to disconnect mental well-being from healthcare, so that not just those who take healthcare can take advantage of mental well-being. The strategy is sound. It was wonderful, beautiful, but this strategy did not take off until my boss, who reports directly to the CEO, said, "Hey, I suffered from depression. I don't want to get up in front of an audience and blubber all over about my journey, but I would be willing to talk about this." And we took her up on that. And the minute she told her story, hundreds, if not thousands, of Best Buy employees came out around the country. "You have given me a new lease on life. I called the EAP after listening to your story. I have a similar story. Here it is. How can I help?" And again, the ability to talk, open up, express yourself, go get help. I would put our mental well-being strategy as one of the top in the country. And it all started when leaders get behind this, when leaders show they're vulnerable, when leaders say it's okay to talk about it. It is amazing how the rest of the employees feel, you know what, it's a safe environment. I can do this without repercussions.
Yeah. One of the things that Liz shared in one of our additional calls, because we wanted so much information that we let you off a few of them, and was this the number of stories that people come out and have shared, and how they aren't necessarily in the areas that people would have thought about. We talk a lot about change the conversation. That's how you change culture. That's how you change lives. And you guys really have succeeded in normalizing it. One of the other data points that we know is 90% of caregivers with high intensity say that just knowing that respite services exist in their area that could give them a break actually reduces their stress. So just knowing that there's a way that they could get a break is positive. This is
I would even add to that, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Other employees knowing that people in need have that ability helps them. When you're in a store environment, especially in the retail environment, when you have an employee in need, that affects the rest of the store. Absolutely. When you take care of one employee, you are influencing the rest of the store. Look at how this organization takes care of us.
Yeah.
Whether I need it or not, it's there.
Well, and what I think you guys do that's really magical there too is you don't define what it has to be for. The idea of respite is what the idea is for you. And there are examples in these stories that you guys have captured of people saying, I just needed to spend a week with my mom because I know she's getting sicker, and it wasn't for a surgery, it wasn't for a treatment, it was because I just needed to know that I had been there. And that's an example of respite that I think it doesn't necessarily mean I did your laundry, I came and cleaned your house. It can be, I genuinely gave you a place to be with someone that you care for, which I think is gorgeous. Yeah. And it's interesting, in our research, we found that more than transportation services or in-home respite care, caregivers are asking for coverage. They're asking for 70% actually, they're asking for someone they can trust to take care of their loved ones so they can go do things that bring them peace, which I love. So one of the things I also love about you is how holistic, I'm going to describe how holistic is your holisticness, if that makes sense. And you said in one of our first conversations when we talked about what we wanted to talk to you about, was it the HR angle or was it the business angle? And the business angle being Best Buy Health. And I think your career really shows you make no distinction between those two things whatsoever. A human is a human. You just foundationally organize from the human out. So with that setup, can you share about Great Call, which you now call Best Buy Health, and how that's evolved in what you're doing and how you're offering and what it is, and how that's even further evolved because of COVID?
Yeah, sure. Best Buy Health is a part of our overall strategy that we've announced, and that is that we believe this combination of emerging technology in the healthcare space, our unique abilities with our Geek Squad and the other in-home advisors that we have in the organization, and the technology and the importance of caregiving for our seniors, we think there's a wicked combination here that we're uniquely positioned to provide that peace of mind, that help to our senior community in ways that haven't been imagined before. And when you look at that business component of what we're trying to do, this is a call center environment, getting technology to seniors so that if they need medical help, if they need any kind of help, to be honest with you, they can call the call center, they can call emergency services, they can get the help that they need. We applied that, and we've got a great partnership with that business, and as that business looks to expand, I look at it as an employee benefit. If I take that benefit that we sell to others, that seniors purchase for their own safety, and I apply that to an employee benefit where I make available this product to our employees at a discount, that they can then purchase this product on behalf of their loved ones, provide them with the technology. They get peace of mind as an employee. We get the benefit of beta testing our own product and using our own product with our own employees. It's really truly turning into an employee benefit component, as well as something that we're selling to the public. And in this COVID environment, we're going the next step, and that is in the call center environment. We are making proactive calls to our seniors to check up on them because of that needing to stay home, the isolation, needing to stay safe. Again, that business has its own wonderful stories of how we've helped people through this crisis, and so there's I think a mutual benefit to our employees as well as to the public, and it's just a great combination to have.
Well, and I love, you talked about how the technology can follow you no matter where your emergency is, and you can connect and get help, and that's a super important lifeline for people who have elderly parents and their need. But you're finding more and more of this outreach for elderly and the loneliness, seniors. But you said the definition of what's an emergency is different now. social isolation and the ability to deliver that well-being. And you went on to say that well-being is important, not just for the senior, for the elder. I love the term elder, because elder is like, I can't wait to be an elder, right? Because A, it means you're not dead, and B,
the definition keeps going further out for me. So.
That's exactly right. Yeah. We'll go back to our old fuddy-duddiness later and our joint need for something to be printed out. But I think what's important in COVID days, and this is being laid bare with the exposure of the lack of public health, and folks really not having support in their communities in the ways that they did traditionally, and this being exacerbated by COVID, that the isolation is not just for the senior and the elder, it's for the person who's caring for them. And I want to give a little more data here. Nearly half of caregivers are feeling isolated, so 40 to 50% of the respondents that we interacted with, and they're connecting less often with family and friends. But there's a generational component, and this is fascinating because when you think about the value of Best Buy Health, it's not just to the individual who needs it so they're not scared in their home or they're not lonely in their home. Millennial caregivers report COVID-19 related loneliness or isolation at 56%. But Gen Z caregivers are feeling it even more, with 69% reporting loneliness or isolation. So if I could know that part of my panic is, are my parents that I can't go see anymore okay? Are my grandparents that I felt responsible for, are they okay? And this is a way for you to be helping to check that box.
Yes.
Are you finding that individuals are buying it not just for themselves, but that subsequent generations are buying it for that individual?
Absolutely. We've seen it with our own employees in buying products for our loved ones. That ability to connect is so much easier today than it's ever been, and so we're seeing that in our business. We're seeing it in our own employees. We're seeing it in the products that we're delivering. It is that way to eliminate and try to reduce social isolation. And in fact, I'll give you my own personal story. My parents live 100 miles away. They live probably 5 or 6 miles out in the country from a grocery store. And the neighbor contacted them and offered to buy them groceries. They're in their 80s, so they don't have to travel to the grocery store. Those people, before they started helping my mom and dad out, connected to me and wanted to make sure that I gave them the permission to help my employee. And so now we've connected, and we connect up virtually, and I've gone up and talked to them. And so technology has made a lot of this possible, and now they have new friends as a result of this, and new bonding, and so the technology helps enable all of that.
Yeah, it's a supportive connection and peace of mind, essentially.
Yep. Yeah.
There's a number that's at least 5 years old that the value of unpaid caregiver labor is $490 billion. That's a 5-year-old number. It's a pre-COVID number. And it actually reflects the number that's bigger than out-of-pocket expenses for healthcare and Medicaid, which is just astounding when you think about it. And this notion that there is an ROI as someone who's running benefits for a corporation is very, very real. Because if you can keep somebody from the stress, from needing to take time off, or just the loss of productivity because they're worrying all the time. And I love that there's an additional component, which is making it possible for someone to buy it if they're not working at Best Buy. They can be buying it themselves as a customer, and how you guys are balancing those two things.
Yeah, the bottom line, and just to give you a statistic back, our last year, 4,000 of our 120,000 employees took advantage of caregiver leave. It was 400,000 hours worth of caregiver leave. But I am telling you, most finance CEOs or some CFOs would be going, oh my God, the cost of not giving caregiver leave is greater than the cost of giving it. And when your competitive advantage, as ours is, it is the people that work with you as a customer, the passion that they have with this business, our ability to solve your problems, our ability to be maniacal about our customers depends upon our employees being free to think about you versus in the back of their mind worrying about somebody else.
Yeah.
And when you can free that and you have that, and again, when the other employees see how we take care of their fellow employees, that's the wicked combination that has worked really well for us.
Yeah. You know that I've been a Walmart cashier. And Sam Walton, our training was a lot about it. You take care of the associate will take care of everything else. And you are practicing that in and the other thing I love that I think language matters so much. And it's one of the reasons why your guide, the caregiver guide, is so valuable, because people say like, dumb it down. No, you smarten it up, right? Because you make it simple, you make it understanding, you make it accessible so people can see themselves reflected in it, and you make it inclusive. And I want to just point out, you didn't just say the people who work for you. You said, in talking about your entire organization, the people who work with you. Yeah. And that's a culture. That's an example of how one builds a culture that feels safe, where people can talk about what's going on, where they feel that they're shoulder to shoulder, nobody's pointing their finger at them. So I think that's really cool. To that point of ROI, to that point of economics, this last question for you: once people have their caregiver program up and running, are they like, all done, there we go? Like, is it over? Liz and I giggled about this one. Like, okay, is this an ever-ending thing, or is this a little bow, put it in the corner, done?
No, it's of course it's evolutionary, and thanks for the curveball. No, and I think it's not a competition either. It is really about what your organization needs to do to provide caregiving to your employees. And as technology evolves, I know where I want to evolve, and that is, I want to be able to take advantage of artificial intelligence and people, and I want people to come into the system, be able to use artificial intelligence to help them level set and diagnose where they're at, help channel them to the right resources. But where they need help, I want to be a concierge for them. I want them to be assigned to a caseworker who can work with the employee, who knows the employee, who can help provide the navigation for them. And through a combination of emerging technology and the human element, I think that we can evolve this into something that really, really does maximize employee engagement and creates a very fulfilling relationship between Best Buy and our employees. It's an emotional relationship, and we want to continue to enhance that over time.
Yeah, it's emotional, it's organic, and you look at an example like COVID. Thank goodness you have muscle memory for how to keep evolving, because if there was ever a proof point of how we need to keep evolving as a society, but oh my goodness, around caregivers, isn't this that?
Yeah. Here's what's happening in our opinion. The caregivers, we've got so many employees working from home right now, and they're providing that caregiver role to the people in their household, yet they're more the pressure on work. The Zoom meetings are great, except they happen meeting after meeting after meeting, and you find out you haven't even taken a restroom break in 4 hours. Right now, it's sort of like when you were in college and you were studying for exams. You just studied and you took the exam, but when the exam was over, then you crashed.
Yeah.
And so we're very worried about that. When things settle down, it's going to hit a breaking point, and we're trying to prepare for that, and making sure that we've prepared for a soft landing, and we're ready to go with whatever employees need, and we're trying to get out ahead of that.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. Well, it is such a pleasure listening to everything that you're doing. It has been a joy for me to get to know you And I'm glad that we're going to be able to continue this conversation in a lot of ways. So thank you, Charlie.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. And again, anyone who wants that caregiver guide or wants to learn anything more about our journey, truly want to give that out to people and keep the revolution going.
Yeah, that's awesome. You rock.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.